How do principals respond when parents come into your office angry, fearful, or frustrated? Hi there, I'm Stan Baker, one of your hosts, along with Shelley Steele. We're retired educators who are still involved with restorative practices in schools, working with principals and with teachers. In this, our first episode of our season 11, can you believe it, our returning guest is Dr. Amy Newman, principal of Newton Elementary in Surrey, British Columbia. Now, she draws on her doctoral research and on Richard Wagamese's philosophy of being like grass, that is, soft, yielding, and resilient, to explore how leaders can stay grounded under pressure. The practice of softening and yielding rather than clashing with defensiveness transforms conflict into connection.
This episode is brought to you by the word grass. Unlike many plants, grass blades have a unique growth point near the base rather than at the tips. That means when they're stepped on, grazed, or mowed, they can recover quickly, a built-in resilience strategy that mirrors the be like grass philosophy Amy referenced. The world's most important crops, wheat, rice, corn, barley, and oats, are all grasses. Without them, human societies would never have been able to sustain large populations. In a sense, grass isn't just resilient, it's foundational.
Our website, www.restorative.ca, is for principals who deal with conflict, who want to make it right in schools, and who want to make it all about students learning. And if you're new to your role in the last 4 years, email me, stan@restorative.ca. Now let's join your hosts, Shelley and me, Stan.
I really deepened my thinking around this stuff through my doctoral work. And I know that I wanted to talk a little bit about Richard Wagamese. I know many people now, he's quite popular now, people know his work. And I think my philosophy of principling has been really impacted by his be like grass idea. And when he talks about, so I would talk a little bit about that he talks about be like grass, it gets stepped on and flattened, but regains its shape again once the pressure passes. It is humbling, accepting, and soft. That's what makes it strong.
Let's keep going with that. I love that framing of things. And this will be a conversation about that. So let's talk about how that basic approach, like your vision for education, is being like grass in all your conversations.
Yeah, it's that idea of yielding and softening, particularly in the face of an aggressive parent or a parent. It could be a colleague too, but typically we were talking today about parents. When they come in hard and angry, meeting them in that same space isn't ever going to work. It's going to be a clash. And just being able to soften, which I think sounds crazy to some people, but actually to just release and soften and yield to what's coming. Sometimes I think about Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. He just bends his body and things go by and he's still there. That's an extreme example, but somehow that letting go just can be really transformative in our own daily practice. It means that you're letting go of defensiveness. If you're upset about something, you're thinking about it in a calm manner as much as possible. And that yielding somehow the other person, I've experienced this over and over, the person like on the other side of the table, parent usually, just realizes that their their energy is not met by your energy. Your energy is soft. Your energy is, it's not weak. Believe me, it's not weak. It's just thoughtful and it's a yielding and you just listen. And I think it actually has a lot to do with the restorative circles as well, right? You're listening, you're hearing what they have to say, even if it's hard. If they're angry at you, you just receive it in a kind way. And then maybe you ask some follow-up questions or notice, like, I can see you're you're really upset by this. What's happening for you? And just try to work through it with the families and parents. And I've found that extremely effective. And it's not, I don't want to make it sound like a rote plan, like first you do this, then step two, but it's actually just a way to respond in a kind of allowing the anger or the fear, often with parents, it's fear, to just come at you wash over you, wash through you, and just accept it, hear it, and respond in a kind and caring way.
Thank you. You put that so beautifully. And what a lot of people struggle with, and it is my way of responding with, I've dealt with very angry children and teens, and then from their parents throughout my career. And I'm going to say it's a skill to be able to do that, but also people have to recognize it isn't a weakness. It isn't giving in. It's actually far more powerful, and it takes more work sometimes. And depending on your personality and what your day's going, it can take more work on some days than others. So we have shared that with people about not meeting, and so that you're not having a clash. It's not the time to pull out your power position at those times, but people do struggle with giving that up as if they need to respond in a way. So I wonder, you gave us a few thoughts around follow-up questions, but what do you do for yourself to be able to receive that in that moment? Because that's where people struggle.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
a great question.
What do you do for yourself to be able to do that?
Honestly, I think it's like a practice. It's not a meditative practice for me, but it is like a practice. And I think as I spent 7 years doing a doctorate in hermeneutic phenomenology and hermeneutic philosophy, that I learned and read a lot of scholars. And they often talk about opening, not just yourself, but openings in the life world, openings in the space around you. And if you look and notice, you can see these openings. They can be small, they can be large. And I think the 7 years it took me till I defended of studying and practicing and reading these philosophers, it it actually, as a principle, it allowed me to let go of blame. I think principals can be blameful of staff, angry at a teacher. Why does he or she do this? Why don't they understand that we're a community, et cetera, et cetera. And I think through the study and practice, I just let go of any kind of blameful thoughts or questions and just tried to lean in and be a lot more curious. That idea of just whether it's a child or an adult, if they're angry, they're suffering or struggling in some way. Why? What's happening? And never coming hard when they come hard is, but yeah, it's not something I think you can just read a book or decide to do. I think it actually has to be a practice. So that means that it's a daily, conscious, thoughtful act of being in a certain way. And it has to feel real for me. It's natural. If you're not that type of person, you might think, I don't want to do that or I can't do that. But for me, it's natural and it feels right because softening in the face of anger and fury, sometimes I know you would see, Shelley, there's nothing to push against and they just relax.
Can't argue with yourself is what eventually happens. It extinguishes it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are, and I don't know if you realize when you were answering that question, you were alluding to some self-talk that you do. This isn't about me. They're in distress right now, or they're in pain. So there's some self-talk, and you may not be conscious of it at this point, but those would be some of the messages I would have people think about in their head when it isn't about me in this moment. There's something else going on for this person. If I meet it with resistance, we're going to have a bigger issue. But yeah, you're right. It is a practice for sure, but people can do it. When you do move away from blame and thinking that all things can shift for sure. Yeah.
I think one other thing, can I jump in here?
Oh, yes, please.
I think one other thing I've done, maybe, I don't know if it's instinctive or what, but as a principal, you might have 300 children, 500 children, 800 children, whatever your context is. My, my duty of care is first. I know that's hard for staff. It's for both. It's staff and children, but since children don't have anyone there to advocate for themselves and they often don't have agency and they might be 7 years old or 8 years old, I'm in an elementary school. I think I'm very connected to the students. I know almost every name of every child, even if there's 300 or more. I make an effort to connect with all of the children that are on the edges, I would say, on the edges of things at school, maybe don't connect, don't fit, can't figure out how to make a friend, will fight rather than admit they are wrong, any kind of children that need gathering. And so those kids and staff know, hey, if so-and-so's struggling, send them to me. Hey, if so-and-so needs a break, I'm always here. We strategize together with staff about how to best support the kids that can be quite just struggling. They're really struggling for all manner. And I think that I get to know those kids. Their art's in my office, whatever. I don't ever want to take the discipline from the teacher if the teacher feels comfortable and capable and wants to have those lengthy conversations or ongoing conversations with children. That's wonderful. But in cases where they feel like they want my support with that, I'm always there. And I feel like that's a really critical key piece because the children then go home and they talk to their family, right? And they'll say, oh, well, when I was in Miss Newman's office and we were making this thing and doing this thing, this happened or whatever. So that relationship with those kids or some of the kids you might see later in their career is already forged and strong. And that, I think, as a parent, that's a huge plus.
Now, how do you find then, like those? Because I love that, gathering the students that are on the edges. Often those parents are on the edges too. What do you do in particular? You've already started with one thing that you do in terms of connecting with the student, but what else do you do to connect with those parents who find themselves on the edges and often in very difficult situations?
Great question. It depends on the situation. Some of the children end up with undiagnosed special needs. They might come in with autism that the parent is angry that they're not acting like the other children. That can lead into a conversation about what things look like at home and how we can get support. It's always a supportive conversation. It's never blameful. So, what can we do to better support this child? They struggle with this or that. How can we help them? Oh, would you like them to see the counselor? We have a wonderful childcare worker. They could take some breaks there if they need just a break from the busyness of the classroom. I could write you a note for a doctor. All of the kind of supportive gestures, then they realize we're not just picking on their child or targeting them, but actually we care and we're trying to get them help. And 99%, I would say, ish, and 98 are generally grateful for that. So, like, for example, we have a school psychologists and other experts in our district, like most do. And I'll bring, if they want, I will say, would you like to talk to the school psychiatrist about this report? They get report just yesterday. School has not even opened. A parent came to the door when I was the only one in the school and knocked on the door and gave me a report and said, I don't understand what this is. And so she came in and we read the report together. And some of it, I didn't understand what it was. It was extremely technical. And I said to her, how about when school opens, we call a meeting together and we get one of our district staff in who can interpret what the heck this thing means. And we can all understand it to better support your child. And she just was like, okay, sure. Because it's a 12-page document. So always, even when the parents themselves are angry or stuck, finding ways to support them so that they better support their child is, I think, critically important. Because if they don't know what to do at home or they're angry at their child for not being like the others, it can be just so destructive to the child.
I've often found too that a parent's response to you as a principal or to school for their student comes out of their own personal experience and that they've had some struggles in school or they were in the principal's office.
Yeah,
How do you recognize and address those kinds of things?
I think I try to explain to them that the world's changed and principals, a good principal is somebody that cares about the whole community, including the families, cares about the children, It's not shameful to be in the principal's office. It's actually a place where kids line up to come. So they're shocked at that
Mhm.
because for them, it's a scary place, but my room is not a scary place, and the conversations we have aren't scary. And most kids, if there's an incident outside, for example, a fight outside, I'll have 20 kids who want to come and talk to me about it. It's not a shameful, blameful, scary space. Sometimes we have tough conversations, but those need to happen. And so I think just helping the parents understand that things have really shifted since they went to school, and hopefully where they're, at least I can speak on behalf of my school and their children in my school, that it's different now, and this is, and then I can describe what that looks like, and that it's a supportive place. Yeah.
Now, you've mentioned too that you've had to practice a way of being like grass, and you didn't just fall into this, unless maybe you did. Was there a particular situation or conversation that you had where you thought, oh, this either works really well or this didn't work very well? I've got to change how things go.
That's a, yeah, good question. I think what happened is that I was always already that way, in the sense of not blameful, not critical, always curious. Like, how come this is happening every day with this child? She seems to think she has friends, but nobody wants to play with her, or whatever it may be. But I don't think I had a name for it or understood what it was until I fell into the philosophy. And so when I started to really deeply delve into David Jardine's work and other people's work who are hermeneutic scholars, I realized that I already was doing much of what they were describing, but I had no name for it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you have any stories of conversations you've had with parents where things went maybe even better than you expected?
I think the celebrations for me is the long-term celebration. I've had over my career, I've had parents phone the police on me in my office. I have had parents yell, screaming. I've had men, like large men, come in with brother or cousin and want to threaten me. Angry, angry, right? Anger is the first place that they generally go to. But over time, obviously, you keep yourself safe, number one, always. Secondly, just through listening and empathy and understanding, because they're always met with, no, we can't. I'm not doing this. What's wrong with your kid? I'm suspending your kid. And I think when they're met with somebody that they see as an ally who actually cares about their kid and wants to help their kid, it changes the dynamic. And the literally a parent that has phoned the police on me for something ridiculous that I won't describe here, ended the school this year with a card and Starbucks and flowers, and was just like saying all these kind things, but it just, I think maybe for new principals, it's a long game. You might have a parent not feel satisfied with your solution or be upset that they have to spend a day in my office doing some restorative practices. Maybe they're upset by that, who knows? But over time, they see the benefit and they see that their kid is connecting more at school, hopefully getting the support they need, maybe getting the designation they need, maybe getting the counseling they need, and that it's over time, I find that it ends up in a positive, almost always ends up in a positive outcome.
Now, grass bends, and you end up bending with these difficult situations. How do you get back to the grass that's standing up straighter? Because this takes a toll on you as well. Those kinds of conversations don't just roll off your back, or do they?
It's That's why it's a practice, right? As like Wagami says, regains its shape once again the pressure passes. That's how I feel. It's like the parent can come at me with whatever they bring, anger, yelling in my face, whatever. You just not really absorb it, but I would say let it pass through. That's not sticking in me. It's letting, I realize this is going to sound strange to folks, but just let it pass through you. And that's what they need. At that moment of anger, they need to yell at someone. They need to be upset and angry. They need that. And if it has to come through me, that's fine. I listen to it. And then I just come back with some questions like, or empathy, like, when's the last time that maybe that parent who might be a single parent with three kids and struggling and whatnot, when is the last time that parent might have heard, that sounds tough. Are you okay? That makes me emotional. Sorry. But honestly, the parents are really struggling, and there's no one there for them to say, "Hey, are you okay?" And when they think, "Oh, this person also cares about me and might help me," everything shifts in the space. The energy shifts totally. And by then, I'm back, straight and tall, back and strong and able to continue the conversation. I think they're used to so much bureaucracy and problems and hitting a hard
Judgment. Yeah.
surface that they just give up. And when they're met with somebody who's willing to actually listen and actually feels like you're on their side, they soften too. And then you can have a conversation.
I love it because it's actually the bending back in the moment that you're
Yes,
talking about.
yes.
It's not, doesn't have to happen on the weekend, but it's right then.
Yeah, exactly.
And my experience is when you've done that once with somebody, their chances are they're not coming next time into your office, even though they're angry about something or not pleased with something. They're not coming back in the same way.
Exactly.
That they can still be frustrated. They can still be angry with some letter they got, but they're not going to come at you the same way when they've
Yeah.
been met with that kind of response.
And Shelley, I think that's exactly true. And I think it builds trust. I think if
Absolutely.
they know or feel that principal has my back, she cares about my kid, she wants him to be successful, she was kind to him when he brought the fill in the blank to school that he's not allowed to have, you know what that is. And I trust she will care for him. They soften. And as you say, they come in differently the next time.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. And I think that's what creates a healthy and whole community.
Now, how do you pass that on to your staff so that they're also like grass?
I think they probably think I'm insane. You know, they see it. I don't necessarily share this philosophy exactly like the way I'm describing it purposefully here. It's just the way I practice in the building. So they see it in action. They see it working. Some, I would say, see it as soft. Some see it as there's always people in a school that want you to be tougher, that want you to suspend, that want you to yell, that want you to be showing you're that in charge and you mean business. And I reject those strategies and practices. And yeah, some staff may not appreciate that. They may think, why isn't she tougher? Why isn't she, that person did this or that? Why isn't he suspended for 3 days? Which is a whole nother conversation about suspension. But I find that they see the way that I practice, that I'm friendly with students, friendly with staff, friendly with parents, and often sit in with them with parents in conversation. Very often I'll say, would you like me to join the conversation? Yes, please. And they'll invite me in with the parent. And it just reinforces the kind of way to speak respectfully and gently to the parent, to really listen. And most of the time, it's quite effective. So I guess modeling is the main thing, Stan, that they see it modeled rather
Yes,
than
and
not a handout.
absolutely. That's right. That's right. It's your way of being, your way of interacting. That was my experience. Probably stands also. We would be called into meetings at
Yes.
schools from board level, and they would just want to turn it over because they've been working at it and it wasn't working. And just being, they'll watch you, and it's just interacting in a different way and still getting to the place you want to get to, but not with you do it my way or the highway sort of thing. And then they don't do it. So it's modeling it, constantly modeling it in your interactions. And if it's the way you are, it's not a chore. This is just the way I move through the world.
Well,
Do watch.
Shelley's often been asked to do your magic,
Yeah,
Shelley.
yeah.
Do your
Work your
magic.
magic. It's
Oh
not
my God.
magic.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder what your magic is.
All the things you're describing. Yeah.
Yeah, some of these parents, and certainly the ones that you're dealing with, I would think, may have never had someone say any that they're coming in ready for this adversarial
Yes.
conversation with people in power, and they always feel like they don't matter, and they always feel like people are at the system hates them and damn school system, etc.
Mhm.
And because it historically has been incredibly punitive. And I'm not sure I can say historically, I would say continues to be somewhat punitive. Our school district is the largest in the province, and we're trying to look at our code of conducts and try to take out some of the punitive language. And there's a lot of pushback, not necessarily from senior management or anything, but probably from within schools who want to have kids fear what's coming. And again, philosophically, I don't want to believe if children, I know this in my heart, that if children are afraid of you, they won't come to you. They won't, even your own children. But for a school setting with hundreds of children, they won't come to you. They won't talk to you. They won't tell you what's happening. They won't tell you what they're worried about. They won't tell you that they heard so and so's bringing a fill in the blank to school tomorrow. They won't tell you because they're afraid of you and they don't trust you. So building that trust and connection with kids means you have an ear to the ground, you know what's happening in your building before it happens, and people trust you to keep them safe and they'll come to you, staff and students. And I think that's really impactful.
That's the basis of a lot of the Vitra work that we did and that continues to happen. It's not that Vitra or the violence threat risk assessment is there to punish students, but the better the relationship you have with students, the sooner you'll hear about something. And if you don't have those relationships, kids are going to have to talk louder and yell louder and act out louder in order for them to be heard about what's coming up or something they've heard or a concern they have. So it's a matter of safety too, really.
Exactly. There's a fight outside. Does someone come in and get you? Are you already outside? Probably I'm already outside. But or they heard somebody say they're planning to jump someone, whatever it may be. And you can say, thank you so much for trusting me and telling me, and then going to that child and say, hey, I heard this is going to happen. What's up? And then that opens up that space, and then you prevent potential violence and other things happening and harm, right? So I think that the being accessible and open and caring and such as an administrator engenders powerful relationships, which leads to greater connection, which I think leads to greater, healthier community, but also a safer community, as you said, Stan. I think that if you are open to that, I certainly discuss it and describe it and share it openly. And every teacher who's had any issue with a student in their room knows that because they're in the meeting with me, they're seeing me interact with the family. We meet ahead of time to talk about some strategies sometimes. Sometimes parents will invest more in me. So because teachers are teaching and they may come in my office distraught and be there for an hour. So then I communicate that back to the teachers. Together we build an understanding of what the family needs. And I think there's a range to answer your question head on, Stan. There's a range. Some staff are going to go, oh, that's really effective. That's really important. I can see that really works. Other staff might be like, they chose 3 times in a row to talk while I was talking, and that's not okay. And that's why they're with you. And I will always give alternate strategies because I've also taught for a long time. Some people have a short teaching career and a long principaling career. Mine is two-thirds, one-third. So I've taught a lot and I can give real teaching strategies that might be helpful, and some will reject it. And some don't really, maybe some teachers sometimes are more about curriculum and really trying to get curriculum across and really trying to teach the lessons, and the disruptions are frustrating for them, as I understand. So yeah, if they actually want to talk to me about that. I can certainly model it, discuss it, describe it. I think the kind of punitive versus restorative is very alive and well in many schools. I think that there is a lingering belief that punitive works and punitive doesn't work. And I understand there has to be consequences if there's some serious behavior, but in my experience over the last few years doing more and more restorative work, the teachers are starting to see it. When a fairly terrible thing happened last year at my school during lunchtime, the person who was responsible for that wasn't suspended. Instead, they had an in-school with me. We still called it an in-school suspension. They were with me, and we talked about what happened. They wrote a letter to the victim and worked on it with me. Mostly, they did a brilliant job, and they went to their classroom and they read it aloud because almost everybody was a witness to what happened. And this is the child's hands were shaking, but they did it. And there were no questions, there was no follow-up. We just let that sit. Teacher was present, and teacher was leaning into this for the first time, seeing this, thinking, and that child, when we walked out of the classroom, was like, said, "Whoa, that's the hardest thing I've ever done." And I thought to myself, this is important. This is why we don't suspend, because sitting at home and playing video games all day is not hard. This is hard. And the incidence of any kind of behavior or issues with that child disappeared for the remainder of the school year. Now
Wow.
that might just be a one-off, but it was impactful, and he did not want to do that again. So it was powerful, and staff, the teacher in the room saw that. I debriefed with counselor and childcare worker, and slowly, all of this, you know how change takes time. Slowly, this understanding, I believe, of the power of restorative practices over the over kind of punitive practices. It's just, I can see it just, I'm starting my fourth year. I can see it starting to really people are taking up that understanding and asking more questions about it and practicing it themselves. And it takes time,
Yeah.
but I feel it's happening.
I love that story.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
What I also really appreciate in what you just described is you've made space literally in your office for what you called, quote unquote, an in-school suspension, something that we don't do. But if that's what people need to hear, that it's being called, so that you can do the restorative work. I love that. Just call it what people need and do the
Right.
restorative work anyway.
Exactly.
I had a picture in my mind of a student in one of the schools that I was working with. It was a school that was in a really economically challenged area, and so there were lots of kids who were on the fringes. And this one particular student was having a very rough day and had been sent into the hall a couple of times. And what stands out for me was that the principal, as you said, went towards the student and actually sat down with them. And initially, the student didn't want to talk, was just, no. And she said, using very restorative language, "What's happening? And I can see that you're very upset." And what turns out is that the dog, his pet dog, had died the night before. And it was the same breed of dog as the principal had. And they had already made a connection about dogs before, and she knew this. And so to see her take that situation with having had the connection before with the dogs into now this dog has died and this child is really upset was just it was transformative for the child. And it was just very special to be able to witness this. And that's the kind of thing that what you were talking about, that it made me think of that.
Wow, that's powerful. It's a way of being.
It
It's
is.
not something to get done. No, it's a way of being in the world and a way of being in your school. I can't imagine ever thinking of it as I can't do that. I need to clean this out, or I can't do that. I need to have this meeting, or I can't do, because it's not an agenda item.
No.
It is the way you move through your life and your school. So that's maybe hard to teach. But once people start to
That's our
practice,
problem. That's
right?
our,
When they start-
yeah, yeah.
It's not a 10-step program. Once they start to practice,
Yes.
they will see, like the story with the dog is so beautiful. Once they start to practice, they're going to say, this works. But also, I think maybe philosophically, people have different feelings about what school is and how school should be, and that I should be seen as tough. I'm the principal, and I need people to be afraid of me. If I ever feel students are afraid of me, I feel I'm doing something wrong. So that's the kind of a backwards way of thinking about it for first a lot of my colleagues, I would say, or some of them. But just the way of being is very different. It's not, oh, darn it, it's 2 o'clock and now I have to do a restorative practice. It's not like that.
Dr. Amy Newman's stories illustrate how principals can model restorative leadership not as a program, but as a daily way of being. She leads by example to help build trust with parents and with students on the margins in particular. So what do you think, and how did this resonate with you? What challenges do you face with parents coming into your office? Take 5 minutes to share your thoughts at the link in the description. You know, it takes practice to be like grass, so I'd like to encourage you to keep at it. The parents and the students are definitely worth it. Got questions? Email me, stan@restorative.ca, so we can have a conversation about how we can make this way of being a habit for you.